art, it makes sense, so on and so forth. But in terms of like these other kind of artists, I think to a certain degree, for Latin America, they are, as you would say, propositive. But it's a different art world in some ways.
Es una pregunta para Pedro. Sé que has hecho proyectos en Brasil en algún momento y como que muchos de los puntos de esta discusión me han hecho pensar que un punto de comparación interesante y quizá más productivo a veces podría ser una comparación la cual ignoro entre la Ciudad de México y San Pablo. Y sé que es una pregunta demasiado sintáctica la que te pongo, pero si podrías como arriesgar un par de ideas en una comparación entre la Ciudad de México y la Ciudad de San Pablo.
I'm just going to very briefly translate the question, so for everyone else. Basically, the core of the question is whether Pedro, since he has been working a lot in Brazil as well, could make a comparison between Sao Paulo and Mexico City.
Well, probably what I have felt of Sao Paulo is that there is a somehow exacerbated version of Mexico in the sense that, for instance, perhaps the gap between wealth and poverty feels to be a little bit, well, I don't know. I don't know if what would be like, but it's also like very much like Mexico, and also the traffic, the problem of mobility is very similar. I mean, the differences are, I believe that it may be harder for an artist to thrive because of the price, because the price of life is extremely high, and for instance, what both Sophie and Chris were mentioning, that for instance, if you make money outside and you spend in Mexico or Berlin, then you can have like a good quality of life. But the prices of life in Sao Paulo are as expensive as London, so it's really hard. So I don't know if that is like a kind of big hindering force for Sao Paulo, I believe. Probably it wasn't the same in the other decades.
Yeah, there's so many things that come out of this conference. You know, it's amazing. There's so many topics and stuff. I really wish we had like 2 more hours because the topic is so big. But just 3 things that I want to say really fast is one of them, like Chris said, the airline thing. I'm from Guatemala, and for us to go to Argentina, it's more expensive than going to Paris, you know. And that's why we're so far away from the South American art scene, though the internet, it's great nowadays, you know. So nowadays, with the Mexicana crash, it's sometimes $150 for us to come up here, you know. So that's what you spend on a party night, you know, no drugs. But that's what you spend on a party night. No, it is, you know. So that was amazing. That was amazing, and it happens because now we have so many more Guatemalan artists coming up to Mexico City. That's one thing. The other thing is what you were saying. From my point of view, and I know from many other Latin American artists, Mexico, it's a big example of the trickle down market. You know, the Orozcos, the Ortegas, all these huge guys, just make people want to do art, want to make art, you know. And then we go to what Pedro was saying, and you said a word that I think it's key, is gentrification, and comparing the art scene to the real estate thing, you know. It gets so expensive to be in New York, it got so expensive to be in Chelsea, the art scene moved to somewhere else and somewhere else. And I think at the end it's going to happen in Mexico City. Right now, I'd say you have maybe 10 more years of the art scene being really strong and beautiful and effervescent, is that the word? You know, and propositive like it is right now. But then I think it's going to happen, you know. Somewhere else is going to be cheaper, nicer, and more exciting. And congratulations, guys.
Guatemala.
Hopefully, yeah, there you go.
I just wanted to respond to something she said earlier. I personally believe that EasyJet is a scourge upon the earth. And I've seen it lay waste to entire cities in Europe. I don't necessarily think it's a positive thing, but like Barcelona, Lisbon, like they've been destroyed by Ryanair and EasyJet.
But I thought you had an interesting point, I thought, because when I thought about the question, and then it is, because we had this, it's a very different thing, but I'm just saying, we had this discussion with curators from Africa, who, like, there is now this kind of German-African big project in Germany going on, and what they were interested were trying to create a Pan-African-like movement, so that they even, because also of flight costs and other reasons, they don't meet. And if they meet in New York, but they would never meet, like at say in Johannesburg or in Dakar. So, and I thought maybe this is also the chance for Mexico, then within this kind of creative energy movement, to create something which is like related, as you were saying, within the Latin American community. Because if you look, like, I mean, if you go to Argentina, how much do you get to know in Argentina from Chile? Nothing. So there are the mountains in between, and that's it. So that could be interesting, like, and that's also maybe interesting then to your question, how Europe, for example, would look to Latin America, as the strongest relation are always related to the past colonies. If you look like where, for example, in Germany, you don't get much to know about Latin American art scenes. It's not such a strong interest.
It's almost the end of the panel. I would like thank you very much for all these amazing insights. I want to tell that many points which have been raised into this talk today, we're going to talk about it tomorrow during the second talk, which is entitled Mexico, Capital of the Americas, with a question mark, which is kind of a pun to discuss with different actors from North America, Guatemala, and Europe to examine their insight and the way things are moving and networks, as Sophie was putting it, are being made, because there is actually an amazing network taking Mexico as a center or periphery, depending on which side you're taking it. And this is exactly the kind of geopolitics we're going to discuss tomorrow, exactly related to Mexico, not so much as a virtual comparison with Berlin, because the title of the talk was not is Mexico City the new Berlin, but more is Mexico City a new Berlin, examining just some very factual circumstances and momentum that can make a city transform into an important artistic center. Of course, you understood that from this talk, it was mentioned many times. So I don't know if the panel would have maybe some patience for just an ultimate question, and after we're done, because we can't go on forever. As you said, we could go for like for a couple hours. If there is a very, very last question. Maybe you, PJ, no? You want it because PJ.
I guess it's not so much of a question, but from my perspective, I'm an artist. I've lived here for 4.5 years, and I think every year or so there's an article like, wow, Mexico City's up and coming, oh my gosh, this is the new moment. Like, I can go back in the New York Times and see different moments, but I think the art world here grows very slowly, kind of what Pedro was saying. I don't think that, like, I don't see a big gallery explosion happening anytime soon, because I don't think there is such a strong market for it. And as a foreigner, it's cheap to live here if you have a foreign currency in your back pocket, like what we were saying earlier, but also if you are working in the peso as a young person, trying to work here, it's very, very hard to stay here. So a lot of young people come for 8 months to 2 years and then leave because they can't really, maybe they don't really want to learn Spanish, or can't really find a groove here as young people. And I think the comparison with like a Berlin phenomenon, that's how I see it in terms of young people moving in mass to a place. I think it would be very much slower here. It's just a comment.
Sorry, thank you. It's just a question if you feel like that the mainstream has like evaporated and the centers of the art everywhere. The question probably is, has art become globalized and interesting art can be made anywhere? Can anywhere become like the center of mainstream?
Well, I just make maybe a quick comment, but I think, for example, Documenta 12 was trying to show that art was always globalized. That would be my comment. In the sense of maybe how we think about globalization.
I guess I'm going to disagree with that and say, although I do agree, but fortunately not. I think there will always be regional scenes, and I've noticed that as a curator, moving from one place to another. No matter how much you think you might know about a place, you don't really know anything until you go there. And another thing is, it's hard. There's still market centers, you know. Like, I think New York is still really relevant by virtue of the fact that it is a market center. London has become a market center, you know. So that's, I think, money unfortunately plays a really, really important role.
What I believe is that also is happening is, for instance, in many places in Latin America, at least, is the same that what happened here in the mid-90s. You know, there's, you know, if you go to Lima or to Medellin or to, you know, like even places like Paraguay, etc. Now there are few alternative spaces and to 1 or 2 or 3 museums that are doing and taking part in a kind of global conversation, whereas 5 or 10 years ago there was nothing. So it's like a kind of effect that, because literally there were like many places where nothing that you could call contemporary art really existed. In the Caribbean, or
do you want to close it?
I think now we're going to close the panel, and thank you very much for everyone for the wonderful contribution, and of course thank you very much to the public for attending the talk, and come back tomorrow.
And so the panel tomorrow will gather Stéphane Benchoam, who's an artist from Guatemala, Albertine de Galbert, who's a French curator and director of this big database called Arte sur.org, if you guys want to check, seeing tomorrow, and Franklin Melendez, who's a New York-based curator, but who's currently also doing projects in Mexico, and I will be moderating this table, so I hope to see you tomorrow at 12:30, and bring your friends. Thanks, bye. It's gonna be in Spanish tomorrow. Voilà, it's gonna be in Spanish. I'll try to speak Spanish. Thanks.
Hi, I'm Guillermo. Soy periodista. Estoy escribiendo un libro, de hecho, sobre cultura contemporánea. Entonces, that's the reception for poder hablar contigo. ¿Cuál es tu nombre?
Yo quizás me lo puedas escribir.
Mi nombre es Sophie. ¿Estás aquí para tu nombre? Sí. ¿Feliz día?
Latinoamérica con 2 exposiciones, Pedro Reyes y reportantes, abre ahí, y ahí seguimos. Entonces yo estoy haciendo como la investigación